listening to episode 6 of the Christian Research Journal Reads podcast. This is an audio version of an article published on equip.org. This is a film review of the movie Barbie. This article is called The Most Overlooked Aspect of the Barbie Movie by Hilary Ferrer. It was published in November 2023 online. This article includes spoilers for the film Barbie. You can read it along with the full documentation and footnotes at our website, equip.org. That's EQUIP.org.
The Most Overlooked Aspect of the Barbie Movie by Hilary Ferrer. Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig, written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, rated PG-13, 2023. Quote, "Some people seem to think that I began by asking myself how I could say something about Christianity to children, then fixed on the fairy tale as an instrument, then drew up a list of basic Christian truths and hammered out allegories to embody them. This is all pure moonshine. I couldn't write it in that way at all. Everything began with images. A fawn carrying an umbrella, a queen on a sledge, a magnificent lion. At first, there wasn't even anything Christian about them. That element pushed itself in of its own accord." Unquote. C.S. Lewis. The Barbie movie 2023 begins with the swelling soundtrack of 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. However, instead of a mysterious monolith towering before us, we see the colossal figure of the very first Barbie, and instead of primates using bones to bash a skeleton, it's rage-filled little girls bashing their baby dolls. Evolution meets social evolution. These newly enlightened daughters can now progress, as Andrea Nevins explains, beyond rudimentary play intended, quote, to rehearse the inevitable end of a woman's story, unquote, and instead imagine their futures as astronauts, executives, and physicists, unencumbered by the constricting role of wife and mother. After all, mothers don't really do much. They just, quote, stand still so their daughters can look back to see how far they have come, unquote. At first blush, this movie doesn't look like it will be kind to motherhood. For most commentators on the right, the movie was start to end pro-choice, feminist man-bashing, matriarchy, good, patriarchy, bad. In Barbie Land, the women are in charge. Everyone gets along. All the women cheer each other on and none of them compete. Because that's what we see when groups of women get together in the real world, right? Motherhood is a total downer. Who let Midge in here? She makes everyone uncomfortable. And as in many comedies geared toward women, all the men are either brainless arm candy, the Kens, bumbling buffoons, the Mattel Executive Board, pervy, drooling oglers, the blue-collar workers on Venice Beach, or total beta males who probably pee sitting down. Alan, played by Michael Cera, and America Ferrara's on-screen and real-life husband, Ryan Piers Williams. There's nary a good man to be found anywhere, in Barbie Land or the so-called, quote, real world, unquote. So yes, girl power, men are dumb, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it, we've seen it, we're over it. And if we are going to play fair, can we all at least recognize how much of this movie portrayed manhood like the Babylon Bee web magazine portrays Californians? I mean, seriously, you don't cast Will Ferrell if you're even remotely trying to portray reality. Conservatives often fault the left for being so PC that they've forgotten how to laugh. Are conservatives, as illustrated by Ben Shapiro's unhinged Barbie rant, guilty of the same thing? Say it isn't so. While I could get into all that, it's all been done and done well. I don't dispute many of the themes that Christian discernment ministries have picked up on, but from my perspective, there was a whole lot more than meets the eye. As I talked about the movie with apologists and other regular moviegoers, I realized that I was picking up on things that nobody else seemed to be talking about. And knowing Hollywood, I don't think the themes I picked up on were purposely put into the movie by the creators. Rather, I think truth has a way of butting in uninvited. Or, as C.S. Lewis put it, there are certain elements that, quote, push in of their own accord, unquote. In the Barbie movie, one of those elements is teleology. What were we made for? The concept of teleology describes the purpose for which something or someone was created. Design implies a designer, and Barbie unashamedly shows how created self-conscious beings long to know the purpose for which they were created, while, ironically, simultaneously struggling to break free of the designer's constraints. Sound familiar? It should. That is basically the beginning of the gospel message, the fall. As Barbie, Margot Robbie, says in her conversation with Barbie creator Ruth Handler, Rhea Perlman, quote, "I want to be a part of the people who make meaning, not the thing that is made," unquote. Even in Barbie land, the clay is trying to break free of the potter. So Barbie accurately depicts the crux of what it means to be a human living in a creator's shadow. In Barbie land, however, the creator is much more amenable to the suggestion that Barbie can decide anything she wants for herself. Barbie wants to be human, a meaning creator, even if that means introducing imperfection into her perfect world. After being told that she doesn't need permission from the creator to be who she wants to be, Barbie closes her eyes to feel her truth. Cue a very revealing video montage featuring the ethereal voice of Billie Eilish crooning, quote, "What was I made for?" unquote, aka what is my telos? The montage is made up almost exclusively of women in everyday life, but what few are talking about is that this, quote, everyday life, unquote, shows the progression of marriage, the birthing of babies, and the raising of children from toddler to teen and then to adult. The message seems so clear to me. We were made for family. And what do you need for a family? Men, marriage, and motherhood. So, ironically, while the movie starts with the bashing of babies in favor of career-ready Barbies, it ends with a montage celebrating marriage and family, and it's all set to a soundtrack asking what we were made for. Yes, Barbie movie makers, you accidentally answered your own question, though probably not in the way you intended. Surely writer and director Greta Gerwig realized that this was the message the montage conveyed. It seemed too obvious to miss. But no, she didn't. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Gerwig shares that her intention of the montage was to make the film, quote, extremely personal, unquote, by featuring real home videos from both cast and crew. There is no mention of the content of the montage. In short, when she asked cast and crew to share their most personal and important memories, they did. And guess what their most prized moments were? It was all about family. No model UN speeches or moments in a school musical, not a keynote speaking clip to be seen. Just relationships, babies, children running around, and friends sitting around a campfire. Seriously, if this scene had been in a Christian movie, audiences would have called it preachy, oppressive, restrictive, or oversimplifying the role of women. And yet, this little nugget of truth managed to wriggle its way in of its own accord. Truth has a funny way of doing that. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. As a non-mother, I recognize the immense value of women apart from childbearing, but I can also admit that not having children is something that is worth grieving. There is still a part of me that wishes I could know the joy of seeing a little Hillary, John hybrid running around. So for the non-married or married without kids women out there, God still has a unique calling, a valuable contribution and telos for your life, even if your circumstances prevent you from fulfilling the general mandate of Genesis 1:28, quote, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it," unquote, ESV. The Great Commission of Matthew 28:19 through 20 can be fulfilled in many different ways, apart from motherhood. Traditional gender roles? Another nugget I noticed that I haven't heard people mentioning is the Barbie movie's oddly accurate depiction of children's play based on the gender of the child. In a supposedly woke movie, the creators portray a considerable amount of gender-conforming behavior. Much of what goes on in Barbie Land represents what actual little girls are doing with their Barbies in the real world. And what are they doing? Hair, makeup, pretty dresses, everyone getting along, everyone helping each other. Many of the traits that have been considered stereotypically feminine. But the girls' play is not what intrigued me the most. No, what was oddly left out of most discussions about the movie is what happened after Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa house started flying off the shelves in the real world. Who would be clamoring for a Ken's Mojo Doja Kaza house? Boys. And what happens after boys suddenly start playing with the Kens? Only the most epic battle Barbie Land has ever seen. We're talking noogies, purple nurples, Ken battalions riding fake horses, complete with Monty Python-worthy sound effects, and basically a, quote, Care Bear stare, unquote, type of sleigh power that the Kens harness by flexing their muscles at the opponent. That there, friends, is boy logic. Magical flexing is generally not found among the fantasy rules of girl play. The movie doesn't seem to make the connection that all this happened right after boys started playing with the Kens. And yet this little reality nugget still pushed its way in. Bottom line, boys and girls in general played differently. I wish the movie makers had realized exactly what they were depicting and flashed a quick scene of boys bashing their Kens together in the real world during the Barbie Land battle scene. But alas, they may not have realized that this is what they were depicting. In short, once boys start playing with the Kens, Barbie Land goes barbarian. The oppression of the sexes goes both ways. Many commentators have talked about how the Barbie movie uplifts the matriarchy while condemning the patriarchy. I've had to wonder how closely these people watch the movie. Who runs the world in Barbie Land? Girls, the Barbies. And it appears fairly utopian, if you're a Barbie. If you're a Ken, too bad, so sad. The only way you're having a good day is, quote, if Barbie looks at you, unquote. Oddly enough, the Barbiearchy is portrayed as equally toxic as classic patriarchy. There's a revealing moment near the end where Barbie realizes that she has no idea where Ken, Ryan Gosling, sleeps. Does he even have a house? After being relegated to the sidelines for the second half of the movie, Barbie realizes what she and the other Barbies have done to the Kens for all this time, and she has a gut check. Pot, meet kettle. The conversation between Barbie and Ken about how unfairly they have treated each other circles back to our original discussion about teleology. What was Barbie created for? To inspire little girls to be whatever they want to be. But what was Ken created for? He was literally created by Ruth Mattel just to be Barbie's arm candy. And the movie depicts him as completely miserable if he cannot fulfill his telos. Even though Barbie tries to convince him to see himself apart from her, example as just, quote, Ken, unquote, not, quote, Barbie and Ken, unquote, I doubt that he will be able to do so. Why? Because we cannot flourish in that for which we were not created. And in this fictional world, Ken was created for Barbie. Try as she might, I doubt Barbie will be able to erase that from Ken's poor little plastic DNA, exactly how the movie shows. Although the overt message that the Barbie movie makers intended was that we get to decide what our telos is, what they depicted was a whole other story. Barbie can be happy being whatever she wants to be because that was the original intention of the Mattel makers. Ken, however, is inconsolable when he's unable to live out his Mattel-designed telos as Barbie's other half. Fact, we created beings are miserable apart from our creator's imbued telos. Reality, y'all. The revenge of reality almost always makes its way into good storytelling, even stories as silly as Barbie. Final thoughts. All in all, Barbie is an intriguing mix of smart writing, cultural provocation, and accidental truths. Any movie that gets the kind of polarized love it or hate it type engagement that we've seen here is worth watching, if for no other reason than to give your 2 cents. While there are definitely woke themes present, the movie does not allow itself to be as black and white preachy as many are accusing it of being, but neither is it countercultural, at least not on purpose. Rather, it is a mix. If you look beyond what was intended and pay attention to elements, as Lewis would have said, that push their way in of their own accord.
Thank you for listening to the Christian Research Journal Reads podcast. You won't want to miss out on the other podcasts from the Christian Research Institute. Please subscribe to the Hank Unplugged podcast, where CRI president and host of the Bible Answer Man broadcast, Hank Hanegraaff, takes you out of the studio and into his study to engage in free-flowing, essential Christian conversations on critical issues with some of the most interesting, informative, and inspirational people on the planet. On the Bible Answer Man broadcast, Hank Hanegraaff answers questions from listeners. every weekday, and you can catch a Best of the Bible Answer Man on Saturdays. In addition, you won't want to miss out on all new articles and author conversations and interviews on the Postmodern Realities podcast, which features new articles from the Christian Research Journal and conversation with those articles' authors. So please explore our website at equip.org. And thank you for connecting to the Christian Research Institute.